I always thought life-shattering moments would come with some kind of warning, a crack of thunder, an ominous feeling, something. Instead, my world collapsed over a perfectly arranged charcuterie board at our favorite bistro. My name is Leah, and after 20 years of marriage, my husband Raymond chose a Tuesday evening to tell me he was leaving me for someone else, someone younger. I think we both knew this was coming, he said, carefully arranging a piece of prosciutto on his plate. His calm demeanor made me want to flip the table. Did we? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Because I was under the impression we were planning our anniversary trip to Greece next month. He had the audacity to look annoyed. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Leah. You're so practical. Everything's always planned, calculated. Emery, she's spontaneous. She makes me feel alive. Emery, even her name sounded young. I took a sip of wine, letting the bitter taste match my mood. How long? Does it matter? It matters to me, Raymond. How long have you been sleeping with her? He shifted in his seat, finally showing a crack in his composed facade. 6 months. She's one of the new project managers at the firm. 6 months. While I was planning our anniversary, while I was helping Malia prepare for her study abroad program in Spain, while I was living our life, he was building a new one with someone else. Mom? Malia's voice crackled through my phone later that night. Dad just texted me something weird about changes and being happy. What's going on? I paced my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear. Your father's leaving, sweetheart. He's met someone else. The silence on the other end felt heavy. What? No, that's bullshit. He can't just... I'm coming home. No, absolutely not. You've worked too hard for this opportunity. Stay in Spain. But Mom... I mean it, Malia. I'm fine. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. Focus on your studies. We'll figure everything out when you're back. After hanging up, I found myself standing in Raymond's home office. Everything was meticulously organized. Architectural drawings, client files, financial statements. 20 years of marriage to a financial analyst had taught him the importance of keeping proper records. Or so I thought. My fingers traced the edge of his desk as a memory surfaced. 3 months ago, I'd borrowed his laptop to check my email. A notification had popped up. Something about adjusted projections for the Morton project. I'd glimpsed numbers that didn't add up before Raymond had practically snatched the laptop away, laughing about client confidentiality. I'd dismissed it then. Now, standing in his office, those numbers started to make a different kind of sense. My phone buzzed. My sister Raylyn. Tell me you're not sitting alone in that house. I'm not sitting, I said, still standing in Raymond's office. I'm standing. I'm coming over, and I'm bringing wine. An hour later, we sat on my kitchen floor, backs against the cabinets. Raylyn topped off my glass. What are you going to do? I stared at the wine, watching it swirl. You know what's funny? For the first time in 20 years, I don't have to consider anyone else in my decisions. No checking schedules, no compromising, no careful planning around his important client meetings. That's not an answer. No, I agreed, a plan already forming in my mind. It's not. My phone buzzed again. A text from Raymond. Movers coming Thursday for my things. Emery and I found a place downtown. Hope we can keep this civil. Civil. Like abandoning your family was something that could be done politely. You know what the worst part is? I asked Raylyn. He thinks he's won. He thinks I'm just going to quietly accept this and fade into the background while he starts his exciting new life with his younger woman. Raylyn studied my face. Why do I get the feeling you're not planning to do that? I thought about those strange numbers I'd seen, about Raymond's increasingly nervous behavior whenever I asked about the firm's finances, about the way he'd been so careful to keep me away from his business dealings lately. Because, I said, standing up and straightening my shoulders, Raymond forgot something important about me. Before I was his wife, before I was Malia's mother, I am, a financial analyst, and if there's one thing I know how to do, it's follow the money. Raylan's eyes widened as understanding dawned. Leah, he wants to throw away 20 years? Fine. But he's about to learn that karma isn't just a spiritual concept. Sometimes karma wears Louboutins and knows exactly where the bodies are buried. I picked up my phone and opened my contacts, scrolling to a familiar name, Oscar, my colleague in forensic accounting. It was time to put my skills to better use than planning anniversary trips that would never happen. Oscar's office always smelled like coffee and determination. He looked up from his computer as I walked in, his expression shifting from professional to concerned friend in an instant. You look like hell, Leah. Thanks. That's exactly what every woman wants to hear after her husband leaves her for someone half her age. I dropped into the chair across from his desk. He winced. Sorry, I heard about Raymond. The whole floor's talking about it. Wonderful. Good to know my personal life is providing entertainment for the masses. I pulled out a USB drive and placed it on his desk. But that's not why I'm here. Oscar raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Remember that consulting work I did for Raymond's firm last year? The preliminary audit that never went anywhere because he suddenly decided to use another company? The one where you said something felt off but couldn't quite place it? I nodded. I've been doing some digging. 3 months ago, I saw something on Raymond's laptop. Numbers for the Morton project that didn't match what was reported to the investors. Oscar leaned forward, his coffee forgotten. How big are we talking? Big enough that if I'm right, it's not just creative accounting, it's fraud. I pushed the USB drive toward him. I need your eyes on this. You're the best forensic accountant I know. He picked up the drive, turning it over in his hands. Leah, are you sure you want to go down this road? This isn't just about revenge. If what you're suggesting is true, people could go to prison. You mean my husband could go to prison? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. The same husband who's currently moving in with his 28-year-old girlfriend while our daughter is halfway across the world. My phone buzzed. Another text from Raymond. Move is finished. Left house keys on kitchen counter. Emery says we should all have dinner sometime when things settle down. I showed Oscar the message. He thinks we're going to be one big happy modern family, that I'll just smile and accept everything while he parades around with his new life. Oscar studied the message, then looked at me seriously. What exactly do you want me to find? The truth. Whatever it is. I stood up and straightened my blazer. And when we find it, I want it handled through official channels. Everything by the book. You're really going to do this? Watch me. Later that evening, Raylan came over with takeout and found me surrounded by papers in my home office. Please tell me you're not wallowing in old photos. The opposite. I pointed to my computer screen. I'm going through every project Raymond's firm has handled in the last 5 years, cross-referencing everything. She set down the food and peered at my notes. Is this legal? Completely. Everything I'm looking at is publicly available information. I'm just connecting dots. I picked up a spring roll. Did you know his new girlfriend Emery was hired 6 months ago as a project manager? The same time their affair started. I nodded. And in those 6 months, she's somehow become the lead on their biggest projects, including the Morton development, which has some very interesting financial discrepancies. Raylan sat down. You think she's involved in whatever's going on? I think nothing at Raymond's firm happens by accident. I pulled up another document. And I think hiring a 28-year-old with barely any experience to manage multi-million-dollar projects raises some questions. My phone rang. Malia. Mom, I've been trying to reach Dad, but he's not answering. He's probably busy settling into his new place, I said, trying to keep the bitterness out of my voice. With Emery. I found her Instagram, Malia said, her voice hard. She's been posting pictures with Dad since January. January, Mom. He took her to that restaurant in Aspen where we always went as a family. I closed my eyes, letting the pain wash over me. I know, sweetheart. I hate him, she whispered. I hate what he's doing to our family. Focus on your studies, I said firmly. Let me handle things here. After hanging up, I turned to Raylin. You know what the worst part is? Raymond always preached about legacy, about building something that would last. Now he's willing to risk everything, his reputation, his firm, his family. For what? A younger woman and some creative accounting. What are you going to do if you find proof? I looked at the photo on my desk. Our family in happier times. I'm going to remind him that every choice has consequences, and I'm going to make sure those consequences find him. My phone buzzed with a message from Oscar. Found something. Come to my office first thing tomorrow. You're going to want to see this. I showed Raylene the message. She studied my face. Are you ready for whatever he found? I'm ready for the truth, I said, closing my laptop. Raymond taught me something valuable this week. Sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones we should have been watching all along. Oscar's face was grim when I walked into his office the next morning. He had spreadsheets spread across his desk and 3 empty coffee cups lined up like soldiers. You look like you haven't slept, I said, closing the door behind me. I haven't. Take a look at this. He turned his monitor toward me. These are the financial records for the Morton project. See anything interesting? I leaned in, scanning the numbers. The construction costs are inflated, way inflated, by about 40%. Oscar pulled up another document. But here's where it gets interesting. The excess money isn't just disappearing, it's being funneled through a series of shell companies. Shell companies? My stomach tightened. Who controls them? Oscar clicked through several screens. That's the thing. They're registered to various names, but guess who's listed as a consultant on every single one? Emery, I breathed. Bingo. Your husband's girlfriend has been busy. These companies were all set up within weeks of her joining the firm. I sank into a chair. So she wasn't just some innocent affair. She was part of the scheme from the beginning. Looks that way. And there's more. Oscar handed me a stack of papers. The Morton project isn't the only one. I found similar patterns in at least 3 other major developments. My phone buzzed. Raymond. I ignored it. What's the total amount we're talking about? I asked. Conservative estimate? Around 12 million. Oscar rubbed his eyes. Leah, this is serious stuff. We're talking federal charges. The phone buzzed again. This time I looked. Raymond. Need to discuss Malia's tuition payment. Can we meet? Second message. Emery suggested that cute cafe near your office. Unbelievable, I muttered, showing Oscar the messages. He wants to discuss our daughter's future at a cafe with his partner in crime. Oscar's expression hardened. You need to be careful. If they suspect you're on to them. They don't, I cut in. Raymond still thinks I'm the same predictable wife he's been taking for granted for 20 years. He has no idea I'm capable of this. What's your next move? I stood up, straightening my jacket. I'm going to meet him for coffee, and while I'm keeping him distracted, I need you to do something for me. What? Contact the SEC anonymously. Give them just enough to trigger an audit. Oscar leaned back. You're not going to confront him. Not yet. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. First, I want him to feel what it's like to have everything he built slowly crumble around him, just like he did to our family. An hour later, I sat across from Raymond at the cafe, watching him stir his coffee with precise movements. Emery sat beside him, her hand possessively on his arm. About Malia's tuition, Raymond started. It's handled, I cut in. I transferred the money yesterday. He frowned. You didn't need to do that. I was going to... What? Take care of it? Like you took care of our marriage? I kept my voice level, pleasant even. I think I'll handle the important things from now on. Emery shifted uncomfortably. Raymond told me you're having trouble adjusting. Change can be hard, but... I'm adjusting just fine, I interrupted, smiling at her. How are you finding the Morton project? Must be challenging, managing such a large development with your limited experience. Something flickered in her eyes. Fear. Before she recovered. Raymond has been an excellent mentor. I'm sure he has. I stood up, dropping some cash on the table. Thanks for the coffee. Oh, and Raymond, next time you want to discuss our daughter's future, Leave your girlfriend at home. My phone pinged as I walked out, a message from Oscar. It's done. SEC received the tip, balls rolling. Another message popped up, this one from Malia. Mom, Dad keeps trying to get me to meet Emery over video chat. Says she's practically family now. I told him to go to hell. I typed back, stay strong, sweetheart. Things are about to get interesting. Back at my office, I pulled up the document Oscar had prepared, a detailed timeline of Raymond and Emery's fraud, complete with transaction records and company registrations. Everything neat, organized, and damning. My phone rang. Raylin. How did the coffee ambush go? Exactly as expected. They think they're untouchable. I looked out my office window, watching people scurry about their day. But Raymond forgot something important about me. What's that? He taught me everything I know about patience, about playing the long game. I smiled as I watched Raymond's car pull into his firm's parking lot across the street. And he's about to learn that lesson all over again. The SEC moves slowly, but when it moves, it's like watching a tsunami approach from a distance. 3 weeks after Oscar's tip, the first ripples hit Raymond's firm. They're here, Oscar said, walking into my office and closing the door. 2 SEC investigators just walked into Raymond's building. I glanced out my window at the building across the street. How do you know? Because one of them is my former colleague, Sarah. She specializes in construction fraud. He sat down. She'll be thorough. My phone lit up with a message from Raymond. Need to talk. Important. Come to my office. Perfect timing, I murmured, showing Oscar the message. You're not actually going, are you? I stood up, grabbing my jacket. Of course I am. I wouldn't miss this for the world. The atmosphere in Raymond's office was tense when I arrived. Emery was there, her usual confidence replaced by barely concealed panic. Raymond's business partner, Chandler, paced by the window. What's the emergency? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. The SEC is doing a surprise audit, Raymond said, his face ashen. They're going through everything. I raised an eyebrow. And you called me because you're good at this stuff, he said, running a hand through his hair. Numbers, audits, it's what you do. Was good at it, Emery cut in sharply. She's not part of the firm. I smiled at her. No, I'm not, which means I have no obligation to help. Leah, please. Raymond stepped closer. If there are any discrepancies, they could shut us down. Discrepancies? Chandler stopped pacing. What discrepancies? The door opened, and a woman in a crisp suit entered. Mr. Quinn, I'm Sarah Matthews from the SEC. We need to discuss the Morton project. I watched Raymond's face pale further. Can this wait? I'm in a meeting. It can't wait. Sarah's eyes swept the room, landing on me. And you are? Leah Jensen, Raymond's soon-to-be ex-wife. I was just leaving. Actually, Sarah consulted her tablet. Your name has come up in our preliminary investigation. You did some consulting work for the firm last year? I did, I confirmed, but I was removed from the project before completion. Emery stepped forward. She wasn't qualified to handle the complexity. I have her original audit notes, Sarah interrupted. They flag several issues that seem to have multiplied since then. She turned to Chandler. Mr. Erickson will need to speak with you as well, particularly about certain offshore transactions. Chandler's face went from confused to horrified. What offshore transactions? My phone buzzed. Malia. Mom, Dad's calling me non-stop. What's going on? Business emergency, I texted back. Focus on your studies. Ms. Jensen, Sarah said, would you mind staying? We have some questions about your initial audit findings. Raymond's head snapped up. Leah has nothing to do with this. Actually, I said, sitting down, I'd be happy to help. In fact, I have copies of all my original work, including some interesting notes about the shell companies. Emery's sharp intake of breath was audible. Raymond's eyes narrowed. Shell companies? Oh, I said innocently. You didn't know about those. Maybe you should ask your girlfriend. She seems to be quite the expert in corporate structuring for someone so new to the industry. The room went silent. Chandler turned to Raymond, his face red. What is she talking about? Sarah cleared her throat. Perhaps we should continue this discussion with your lawyers present. All of your lawyers. I stood up. I should go. But Sarah, you have my number if you need anything else. As I walked to the door, Raymond grabbed my arm. Did you do this? He hissed. Did you report us? I looked at his hand until he released me. You know what's interesting about karma, Raymond? It always finds its way home, even if it needs a little help with directions. In the hallway, I heard Chandler's voice rising. What the hell have you done? What shell companies? My phone buzzed again. Oscar. Sarah says they found everything, and more. It's going to be bad. I stepped into the elevator, my reflection showing a smile I hardly recognized. It wasn't the smile of the woman who had sat quietly through dinner while her husband announced he was leaving. It was the smile of someone who had finally taken control. Raylene was waiting in my office when I returned. Well? The SEC is very interested in Emery's business acumen, I said, sitting down, particularly how a 28-year-old project manager could set up such an elaborate financial scheme. And Raymond? Currently discovering that his perfect new life isn't so perfect. I pulled up my email, finding a new message from Sarah requesting a formal interview. He's also learning that his girlfriend might not be as loyal when facing federal charges. Are you ready for what comes next? Raylene asked softly. I thought about the look on Raymond's face when I mentioned the shell companies, the way Emery's confidence crumbled, the betrayal in Chandler's eyes. I'm ready for justice, I said, clicking reply on Sarah's email. Everything else is just details. The airport arrival terminal buzzed with activity, but I spotted Malia instantly. My daughter had always been impossible to miss. She had Raymond's height and my determination. She practically ran toward me, dropping her bags to throw her arms around my neck. I couldn't stay away, she said into my shoulder, not with everything happening. Your studies are fine. I arranged to finish the semester remotely. She pulled back, her eyes fierce. I saw the news, Mom. Prominent architectural firm under federal investigation. Why didn't you tell me? Let's get your bags first. In the car, Malia scrolled through news articles on her phone. Sources suggest fraudulent activities involving multiple development projects. Questions arise about recent hire Emery Howard's role in financial discrepancies. She looked up. Did Dad really do all this? It's complicated. Then uncomplicate it for me. I pulled into our driveway, killing the engine. Your father and Emery were funneling money through fake companies, millions of dollars. And you caught them? I pointed the SEC in the right direction. They did the rest. Malia's phone buzzed. Raymond. She declined the call. He's been trying to explain himself for days. Says it's all a misunderstanding, that Emery tricked him. Of course he does. Did she trick him? I turned to face my daughter. Emery didn't force him to have an affair, or to leave his family, or to commit fraud. Those were his choices. As if on cue, a car pulled up behind us, Raymond's sleek BMW. He got out, looking disheveled in a way I'd never seen before. Malia, he called out, why aren't you answering my calls? She grabbed her bags. Maybe because I don't want to talk to you. Princess, please, let me explain. Explain what? She whirled on him. How you cheated on Mom. How you committed crimes with your girlfriend. How you ruined everything. It's not that simple, he pleaded. Emery, she set me up. She had this whole plan. Stop. My voice cut through his excuses. She's barely older than your daughter, Raymond. If anyone was manipulated, it wasn't you. The SEC is asking questions about you too, Leah, he said, his tone turning accusatory. About your preliminary audit, your sudden removal from the project. Good, I smiled. They should ask those questions. I have nothing to hide. Dad, Malia's voice trembled. The restaurant in Aspen, our family place. You took her there in January. That was before she supposedly tricked you, wasn't it? Raymond's face fell. Malia. I saw the pictures. She tagged you in them. Tears spilled down her cheeks. That was our place. How could you? I'll make this right, he said. Once this SEC thing blows over. It's not going to blow over, I interrupted. The evidence is too solid. Ask Chandler. Oh, wait, you can't. He's too busy cooperating with investigators to save himself. Raymond's face darkened. You did this. You're destroying everything I built. No, Malia stepped between us. You did this, and I'm staying with Mom. But go back to Emery, she said. If she's still around. I heard the SEC is very interested in her sudden financial expertise. Raymond's phone rang. He checked it, his face paling. This isn't over, Leah. Actually, it is. I picked up one of Malia's bags. Your choices, your consequences, that's how karma works. We watched him drive away, tires squealing. Malia wiped her eyes. Is Emery really going to jail? Probably. The SEC found offshore accounts in her name. She was siphoning money before she even met your father. And Dad? That depends on how much he knew and how quickly he gets a good lawyer. Inside, Malia wandered through the house, touching familiar objects. Everything looks different somehow. Things are different, I said, but maybe they needed to be. My phone buzzed. Oscar. Emery's lawyer reached out. She wants to make a deal. Says she has proof Raymond knew everything from the start. I showed Malia the message. She sat heavily on the couch. He really did know, didn't he? All of it? Looks that way. Then he deserves whatever happens. She looked up at me. Did you know, when you started investigating? I knew something was wrong. The rest, I sat beside her. The rest was just following the evidence. Like a trail of breadcrumbs. More like a trail of greed, lies, and bad decisions. I squeezed her hand. But that's your father's path now, not ours. Another message from Oscar. SEC wants another meeting tomorrow. They're moving fast. Malia read over my shoulder. Are you ready? I thought about Raymond's face in the driveway, about how quickly his arrogance had turned to desperation, about how he still thought he could talk his way out of consequences. I'm ready, I said. And tomorrow, your father's going to learn that karma doesn't accept excuses. The SEC's conference room felt colder than necessary. Sarah sat across from me, documents spread between us, while two other investigators took notes. Let's go over your initial audit findings again, Sarah said. You flagged the Morton project discrepancies in March. Yes, Raymond removed me from the project the next day. And did he give a reason? He said I was being, quote, unnecessarily thorough. I smiled without humor. Apparently, good accounting was bad for business. The door opened, and Raymond's lawyer walked in, followed by Raymond himself. He looked expensive and exhausted. This interview needs to stop, his lawyer announced. My client... Your client isn't the subject of this interview, Sarah interrupted. Ms. Jensen is providing evidence voluntarily. Raymond's eyes locked with mine. Evidence of what, exactly? Of this. Sarah slid a document across the table. Your signature, authorizing payments to shell companies controlled by Emery Howard, 6 months before she was officially hired. The lawyer grabbed the paper, but Raymond's face had already given him away. My phone buzzed. Malia. Emery's doing a TV interview. Turn on Channel 7 now. Sarah was already reaching for the remote. The conference room's wall-mounted TV flickered to life, showing Emery in a conservative blue suit, tears streaming down her face. I was manipulated, she was saying. Raymond told me it was standard industry practice. He said if I wanted to succeed in architecture, I had to play by his rules. Raymond shot to his feet. She's lying. Mr. Quinn, his lawyer warned. He promised to leave his wife to make me partner, Emery continued. But it was all about the money. He used me to set up those companies because his wife was getting suspicious. The lawyer turned off the TV. We need to talk, Raymond. Now. They stepped out, leaving me with Sarah and her team. She raised an eyebrow. Thoughts? Emery's lying about being innocent, I said, but she's telling the truth about Raymond. He never does anything without a plan. My phone buzzed again. Oscar. Chandler's testimony just landed. It's bad, really bad. Sarah's phone rang. She listened, her expression hardening. I see, yes, bring him in. She hung up and looked at me. Your husband's business partner just provided documentation showing Raymond orchestrated similar schemes at 3 other firms before this one. It was his business model. Of course it was. I stood up, gathering my things. Are we done here? For now, but stay available. In the hallway, I heard Raymond's voice from around the corner. This is your fault, Leah. You vindictive. Careful. I stepped into view. You're already in enough trouble without adding witness intimidation. His lawyer pulled him back. Mr. Quinn, not another word. You know what's interesting, I said, keeping my voice level. You actually think I did this for revenge. It never occurred to you that maybe, just maybe, I did it because it was right. Right? He laughed bitterly. You destroyed everything. No, you did that. Every lie, every scheme, every betrayal, those were your choices. I checked my phone. Another message from Malia. And now our daughter is watching you face the consequences. Leave Malia out of this. You brought her into it when you decided your midlife crisis was more important than her family. His lawyer finally managed to drag him away, but not before I saw something I'd never seen before in Raymond's eyes. Fear. Outside, Raylin was waiting in her car. How'd it go? Emery threw Raymond under the bus on national TV, I said, buckling up. And Chandler provided evidence of previous schemes. So it's over? Almost. I showed her Oscar's latest message. Federal indictments coming tomorrow, multiple charges. How do you feel? I thought about Raymond's face when Emery's interview played, about the way his carefully constructed world was crumbling, about Malia, watching it all unfold. I paused. I feel like karma finally caught up. My phone rang. Malia. Mom, I'm at the house. Dad's here. He's demanding to see you. I'll be right there. I turned to Raylin. Change of plans. One more confrontation to go. She made a U-turn. Want me to stay? No, this needs to be just family. Be careful. I'm done being careful, I said, watching the streets blur past. I'm done being quiet. I'm done being the understanding ex-wife who looks the other way. Good, Raylin smiled, because you were never very good at those things anyway. As we pulled up to my house, I saw Raymond's car in the driveway. Through the window, I could see him gesturing wildly, while Malia stood her ground. Ready? Raylin asked. I grabbed my bag, feeling the weight of the SEC documents inside. Ready to end this, once and for all. It was time for Raymond to learn that karma doesn't just catch up. Sometimes it brings receipts. The scene in my living room looked like something from a soap opera. Raymond paced frantically while Malia stood with her arms crossed, her face set in stone. You're making a huge mistake, Raymond was saying as I walked in. I can explain everything. Like you explained taking Emery to our family vacation spot, Malia shot back. Or maybe you'd like to explain the $12 million in fraud. It wasn't fraud, it was creative accounting, I interrupted. That's what the SEC is calling it too, right before they use words like federal indictment and prison time. Raymond spun toward me. This is all your fault. You couldn't just let me be happy. Happy? Malia's voice cracked. You mean happy destroying people's investments? Happy abandoning your family? Princess, you don't understand. Stop calling me that. She stepped forward. I'm not your princess anymore. I'm just another person you lied to. My phone buzzed. Oscar. Federal agents are moving. 10 minutes. I showed Raymond the message. All the color drained from his face. You have a choice, I said quietly. You can leave now, go home, wait for your lawyer's call, or you can stay here and get arrested in front of your daughter. They can't arrest me, he said, but his voice wavered. Emery handled all the paperwork. Really? I pulled out a folder from my bag. Because these documents show your signature authorizing everything. Every transaction, every shell company, every fraudulent report. Where did you get those? Chandler provided copies. Turns out your partner doesn't appreciate being kept in the dark about federal crimes. Raymond's phone rang. He checked it, his hands shaking. It's Emery's lawyer. Better take it, I suggested. Sounds like your girlfriend's plea deal is ready. He answered, putting it on speaker. What? Raymond, don't say anything. Emery's lawyer's voice filled the room. The feds are on their way. Emery's given them everything. Everything? The offshore accounts, the backdated contracts, the kickbacks, all of it. They know you've done this before at other firms. Malia made a small sound, like all the air had left her lungs. Other firms? Raymond ended the call. Malia, please. How long? She demanded. How long have you been stealing from people? I never stole. I just redistributed funds. Into your accounts, I added. And Emery's. Tell me, was she worth $12 million? Blue and red lights suddenly flashed through the windows. Car doors slammed outside. Dad? Malia's voice was small. Did you ever actually love us? Or were we just part of your cover story? Before Raymond could answer, there was a sharp knock at the door. Federal agents, open up. Back door, I said quietly. If you run now, you might make it to your car. He looked at me, then at Malia. For a moment, I saw the man I'd married 20 years ago. The one who used to carry our daughter on his shoulders, who promised to love us forever. Then he ran. He made it halfway across the backyard before they caught him. We watched from the window as they read him his rights, as they led him away in handcuffs, as his perfect life finally fell apart. Malia turned to me, tears streaming down her face. You knew, didn't you? You knew what would happen when you started investigating. I knew he was guilty, I said, pulling her close. I just didn't know how guilty. My phone buzzed, a news alert. Prominent architect arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. Project manager Emery Howard cooperating with authorities. Then another message from Oscar. Sarah says they found evidence of tax evasion too. They're seizing his assets. Malia read over my shoulder. What happens now? Now? I looked out at the empty backyard where my husband of 20 years had just been arrested. Now we rebuild, without his lies, without his schemes, without looking over our shoulders. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner, she whispered. What he really was. Neither did I. Not until he showed us. My phone rang. Raylin. Just saw the news. You okay? We're okay, I said, watching Malia scroll through the breaking news articles. It's over. No, Malia said, looking up from her phone. It's not over. It's just beginning. Our beginning. She was right. Raymond's ending was our beginning. A chance to start over, to build something honest, to be the people we were always meant to be. My phone buzzed one final time, a message from Sarah. Emery's testimony is damning. He's looking at 15 to 20 years. You did good, Leah. I deleted the message without responding. Some might call it revenge, but I knew better. This wasn't revenge. It was justice. And justice, unlike Raymond's schemes, was built to last. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters as I made my way inside. Malia squeezed my hand, her grip tight with tension. Ready, she whispered. Ready. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for 9, but we arrived early. Oscar and Raylin were already there, saving us seats in the gallery. Across the aisle, Emery sat with her lawyer, looking much older than her 28 years. She got 8 years, Oscar murmured as we sat down, part of her plea deal. And Chandler? 5 years plus restitution. He's cooperating fully. The bailiff called for everyone to rise as the judge entered. Raymond was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, such a change from his custom suits and perfect hair. He looked small somehow, diminished. Before we proceed with sentencing, the judge began, would the defendant like to make a statement? Raymond stood slowly. Your Honor, He turned, his eyes finding mine and Malia's in the gallery. For a moment, nobody breathed. I destroyed everything, he said finally. My family, my firm, my reputation. I did it all, and I did it knowingly. because I thought I was smart enough to never get caught. The judge leaned forward. Continue. I've done this before, at other firms. It was never about need. I made plenty of money legitimately. It was about power, about proving I could. He swallowed hard. But I lost something worth more than money. I lost my daughter's respect, my wife's trust. Ex-wife, I whispered, but Malia squeezed my hand again. I'm ready to accept my punishment, Raymond finished, whatever it may be. The judge shuffled some papers. Mr. Quinn, your crimes were not crimes of passion or desperation. They were calculated, repeated offenses committed over many years. You stole not just money, but trust, dreams, futures. She paused, looking directly at him. I sentence you to 18 years in federal prison. You will pay restitution of $14 million, and you will never again work in any capacity involving financial oversight or management. The gavel struck. It was done. As the bailiff led Raymond away, he tried to catch our eyes one last time. Malia stood, her voice clear in the quiet courtroom. Goodbye, Dad. Outside, reporters swarmed us with questions. Malia handled them like a pro. Yes, we're satisfied with the sentence. No, we won't be visiting him. Yes, justice was served. My phone buzzed. Sarah. Final tallies coming in. Total fraud amount closer to 15 million. You should be proud. Your initial audit started all this. Raylan appeared at my elbow. Lunch? I think we could all use some food and wine. At the restaurant, Oscar raised his glass. To karma. To justice, Malia corrected. To new beginnings, I added. My phone lit up with a message from Raymond's lawyer. Client requests monthly visits with daughter. Please advise. I showed it to Malia. She took my phone and typed, no visits, no calls, no contact. I'll reach out if and when I'm ready. You okay? I asked softly. She smiled, a real smile, not the brave face she'd been wearing. I'm better than okay. I'm free. We both are. Oscar cleared his throat. Speaking of free, Sarah mentioned there's a position opening in the SEC's Forensic Accounting Division. They're very interested in someone with your skills, Leah. Really? I sat back, considering. That would be poetic. It would be perfect, Malia said. You could help catch other people like Dad. Like Raymond, I corrected gently. He's not Dad anymore. He's just Raymond. My phone buzzed again. A news alert. Prominent architecture firm to be restructured under new management. All current projects under review. They're keeping the good parts, Oscar explained, starting fresh. Just like us, Malia said. Raylan raised her glass again. To the good parts. Later that evening, as Malia and I walked into our house, our home, she stopped in the entryway. Mum, thank you. For what? For showing me what strength really looks like, what justice looks like. She hugged me tight. What love looks like. I held her close, remembering the little girl who used to call Raymond her hero. We'd both grown so much since then. My phone buzzed one last time. The SEC's official job offer. As I read it, I felt something settle in my chest. Not closure exactly. Something better. Purpose. What do you think? I showed Malia the offer. Ready to share your mum with other families who need justice? She grinned. As long as you're home for dinner, we've got a lot of new memories to make. I accepted the offer right there, standing in our entryway, my daughter by my side. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well, doing right, and helping others find their own justice. Raymond might have 18 years to think about his choices, but we had the rest of our lives to make better ones. And we were just getting started.